Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to a one shot interview here. I have a local comic book shop owner. He owns Arkham Comix. If you've listened to the show for a few years, you've heard us mention the shop before in our new segment, just discussing things that we have gotten or just encouraging people to support their local comic book shops. So I have with me Mr. Bill Young. How you doing, sir?
Evenings.
I'm glad you've been able to join us, and it looks like you're there in your local shop. Is that right?
I'm just chilling here in the shop, Arkham Comics, where a kid can be a kid. I think that's legal, right?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Sometimes nowadays they want kids to grow up way too fast, and but it's good for kids because I know my daughter, she loves going to the comic book shop, even though she wants everything in the store, and I'm like, baby, we can't buy everything in the store. Sure, Bill would
I
appreciate
mean,
it, but we just
hey,
so
that's a prerogative.
say what?
So that's a kid's prerogative, most definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you guys, even just the little bit we see right now on your screen, there's some awesome stuff there. But so the shop that you own is in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I know probably a lot of people listening to this are probably never going to get a chance to step into the store. But honestly, man, I'd love to just to get to know how you got involved in the comic book store. I'll say the comic book store game, the process, the interest. How did this all begin for you?
I mean, I started collecting probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old. My first comic book that I remember picking up off the shelf was Amazing Spider-Man 361. It was the first appearance of Carnage. And actually started carrying comics as a way to supplement a little bit. And I saw this comic book on the shelf and I knew who Spider-Man was, of course, and I was like, "Well, who's this red guy like just destroying Spider-Man? I need to know about this." So, that started a whole process of fandom for me. So, pretty much been collecting since I was about 11 or 12. And then I got to a point where, you know, I was getting really tired of my corporate job that I worked, and it was just too many hours. And I was like, I really want to do something comic book related. So I approached one of the local comic book stores and I said, hey, you know, I know you guys do conventions. I'd like to get involved. Like, how can I help? Can I bring guests? What can I do? And the advice actually was, why don't you open a comic book store? So I thought about it and thought about it, and I was like, you know what? That's probably a good idea because my collection was so big at that point that, you know, it probably needed to be in a store anyway. So that's pretty much how Arkham came about. There was no, you know, magic or anything like that. It was just, oh, hey, I love comic books. I love toys. I love the whole culture. Why not open a store? So
So, what made you pick
that's
the name Arkham?
so there's two elements to that. Of course, Batman, Arkham Asylum,
Yeah.
very recognizable. And then Arkham actually came from H.P. Lovecraft, the horror author, and whether you love him or hate him in his personal life, he is kind of the father of horror, and I have to give him a little bit of credit for that. So he used Arkham a whole lot in his stories, and that was another, secondary kind of deal for us. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm wearing the Batman hat, so I definitely lean to the Arkham Asylum um, leanings. Tell my wife if I ever went crazy,
right,
that's where she needed to have me admitted to, committed, or whatever, however you want to say it. So,
yeah,
so
you can
in
come hang out here anytime you want.
absolutely, man, absolutely, and I do love just the kind of the vibe of the comic book shop. I know at one point y'all had you had two stores and now you're back down to one. So what has been kind of what was the hardest part of opening the store, or what's the kind of the first hurdle you had to overcome?
To be honest with you, the first hurdle is just to do it. There's no you know, financially speaking, it's a lot of money to tie up. You're taking a risk, especially, starting around, whether you love it or hate it, it's got its reputation. But, I saw potential here, and there was nothing here. There hasn't been anything here in a long time as far as comics go. So I wanted to try and just see what happened. And like I said, the hardest thing was just pulling the trigger. And I think that's what gets a lot of people too. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, you have to treat it like a business. Like, I love my customers. I love talking about comics. I love, you know, making people happy and getting them what they want. But you kind of have to look at it as a business. And I think that's sometimes the hardest part is, keeping that aspect. Like, I had to quit being a collector, and I
Mm.
had to be, a seller of comics and toys. I mean, if I kept everything in here that I thought was cool, I'd be bankrupt sitting in a garage somewhere with a bunch of toys and comics.
You
So,
just be a collector, right?
right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
man. Well, I'll be honest, before I kind of started reading comics after the first Avengers movie. I just wanted to understand these characters more. And I think a lot. I think the MCU created a spark of interest in comics. Did you kind of feel that way, being a comic book store owner?
Oh, I agree 100%. And the funny thing is, you have these, I guess you could call them elitist comic readers, maybe, that are like, oh, that movie's not like the Avengers at all, or that's not how it goes. Well, here's the thing. The movies bring in an audience that might not normally read comics. So at the end of the day, it's my job and, the quote elitist job to educate people on how the comics really go. And they've done a really good job of, focusing on the characters that you see in the movies as far as new comics coming out and things like that. So it's a little bit easier for us to be like, oh, hey, did you see the Avengers movie? Yeah, okay, well, check this book out. That's kind of how it's been with the MCU and DC as well. So
Yeah. So, in your opinion, what has been the most comic book accurate film that you've seen released over the past 10, 12, 15 years?
hmm I can tell you my favorite, honestly, and I think a lot of people will agree, it's Watchmen, actually. That
Mm.
was pretty accurate to the comic book. I mean, honestly, some of the frames were panel by panel the comics. I mean, as far as team building, like Avengers and Black Panther and things like that, they've got the characters down pretty well. But as far as accurate comic book adaptation, I'm thinking Watchmen.
Gotcha. Now, is that the movie or the series?
The movie. The series was really good too, and the series was just a continuation of the actual comic book. It didn't follow the movie, which was kind of cool. So you get
Yeah,
to
that's
see a,
interesting.
a continuation of that. So
Yeah, I know one of the things that I wanted and I didn't know it really existed, and it kind of sort of exists, is like comic books that carry one film to the next. And
mhm.
I did notice that when I was buying those preludes to the movies, they ended up being a comic book representation of the previous film. And I was wanting
Yep.
more continuation of the actual like middle ground there. But Black Panther actually had a little bit of extra story in that prelude that the other ones didn't really have, which I thought was pretty cool. And so do you feel like the movies need to be comic book accurate, or do you feel like the films can kind of do its own thing?
Oh no, not at all. Films can kind of do their own thing. A lot of the times when I watch a movie, whether I like it or whether I don't, I kind of look at it in the aspect of, okay, this is kind of like an Elseworlds. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example, like Joaquin Phoenix Joker. It doesn't tie into anything, but it's the Joker. Whether you loved it, whether you hate it, I just kind of look at it as, okay, this is someone else telling the story of the comic book character that we love. And that's the thing, is there's so many different versions of the Joker, throughout the years that it kind of doesn't make sense for you to complain about a movie, but you'll read, all the different comics where he is a different character every time. So,
That's a good
um,
point.
so yeah, they don't have to be accurate for me. I like them regardless, and I'm glad that they're actually making comic book movies because back in the day we had Spider-Man in his pajamas. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that was the best we got, and now they're making great stuff. And I think I feel like it all started with the Keaton Batman, and I mean, Batman's one of those characters too. He can be a million different people and still be Batman.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it works too. So
Yeah, I think it works with Batman. I don't know if it's going to work with an Iron Man, or even at this point, we're seeing the outrage of Captain America, even though I feel like
right,
that whole fiasco, it lets you know that the creator of Falcon and Winter Soldier did a good job at making you hate the what people assume to be kind of a type of antagonist.
right, right.
And but people,
The great thing the great thing about the TV shows that Disney Plus is putting out with Winter Falcon Soldier or Winter Soldier and Falcon, excuse me, um, is it's almost like a prelude to something bigger. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like WandaVision. If the next Avengers movie comes out and it has Wanda, shooting hex spells and whatnot, you're not going to be like, well, when did that happen? Because hey, we've seen the TV show that was kind of like an in between, big events, and I think that they're really smart to be doing that right now. So
oh yeah, absolutely. So I want to get back to kind of the shop and some of the things that you do in the local comic book shop. So, what is the experience like in a comic book shop that you just can't get from shopping online comics?
you know, um, so I was interviewed by the newspaper a few years ago, and they asked me, what my demographics was, and I was like, I don't really know. Like anybody from 10 to 100 years old comes in here, and I mean, you have people that work for the district attorney's office. You have your gangster rappers and things like that come in that really interesting people. And I think when you come in the comic book store, and this is pretty much what I've seen all throughout the US going to comic book stores, is you have a lot of individuals that come in and meet where necessarily they wouldn't be interacting with each other. And it really, really, really makes me happy to see, people come to our events, they meet like-minded people, they become friends, maybe they look out for each other and help each other get jobs. I see that all the time, and it's really cool. And I like the dynamic of, you can have district attorney's office with the button-up suit, or you can have the guy with pants around his knees, but they're all talking about Spider-Man or Batman or whoever. So and it's really cool. I mean, you have all different, races, religion, gender. It's all inclusive, and I think there's not a lot of places that offer that kind of, I guess you'd call it maybe like a camaraderie.
Yeah,
So, uh, but that's what I like the most about it, and I think that's the experience that you get at a comic book store. So,
yeah, that's one thing I
whereas they're kind of embarrassed, like maybe, they go to school, like they're a school teacher or something, and everybody's like, I don't understand why you like comics, but it's like when you come in here, it's like, oh man, did you read that last issue of, whatever it is that they're into, and everybody's like, oh yeah, it's great. So you can hang out in here and just be yourself. So
Yeah, I know that's one thing that I was really surprised when I first like started going to, Arkham. I was looking around like there's not people in here like I thought would be in here. For some reason, I was thinking like either the emo crowd, the goth crowd, the purple, pink, blue hair, and there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. That's just what I assumed. I
right,
was thinking I'm going to be the sore thumb walking in here just in a regular t-shirt, jeans, and a hat, and I realized
No.
everybody in here is different. And then you're speaking of Comic Cons or even a free comic book day. The first time I went to a free comic book day, I was like, I didn't realize this many. Like comic books don't have one demographic. There is no target audience for comic books.
Right.
And the sergeant, my cousin has an uncle who is the sergeant at the hospital police that I work at, and he trades comics, thousands of dollars comics as for fun. And it's like if you were to see this guy in like Walmart, you would have never thought that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thrown
It's
off.
all
I was
over the place.
I was really surprised, and I remember one time I went to a Food Lion, and there was a guy wearing a no, I was wearing a Carolina Panthers hat. So whenever I was in the age or I was at a point where I was really big into Carolina Panthers and football and everything, and we just sparked up a conversation out of nowhere, and I left and I was thinking, this is an older black gentleman, talking to a younger white guy, and I was thinking we didn't know anything about each other at all, but that we both love the Panthers.
Exactly.
And so people can go into your shop and just love comics in general and connect. So that's a really cool thing that I think comics does in the comic book shop. And so and I think one of the other things I realized too was like I didn't realize cosplay was a thing. And so the first time I went with the Arkham, I saw so many people. There was a gentleman he had created his own Batman versus Superman Batman suit, which I
Oh
thought
yeah.
was really awesome. And you got people all sorts of ages, just a world I didn't know existed. And
Oh, no doubt.
so even one of the cool things was Arkham actually had a wedding that took place in it that was around the same time where Batman and Catwoman were supposed to get married in the comics. What was like? What kind of sparked that? What was that like to host that type of an event in your shop?
Look, here's the thing about running a comic book store is any idea that normally you would think was kind of crazy, like it's doable in a comic book store. So, they had the Batman Catwoman, what was it, Batman issue 50, where they were supposed to get married, and I have two friends that actually cosplayed as Batman and Catwoman. They were married, so what would you think about renewing your vows, as Batman and Catwoman? Because I mean, it's almost like your second identity anyway. When you go to cons, they're Batman and Catwoman, and a lot of people recognize them, but don't even really know their real names because they've never met them outside of Batman and Catwoman. So, it's just one of those things that we went and bought a nice little cheapo trellis thing at the store, and they were like, "Sure, let's do it all the way." So, and you try to do things that are fun like that and that tie into the comics and things. But like I said, any crazy idea you can come up with, you can usually implement it, at the shop. So that's how we roll.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I walked, and I was thinking I couldn't imagine how many just random visitors up to the store that day walk in there and they're, hold on, wait, what's going on here?
Right.
So I want to talk
Exactly.
about what it's like to bring in guests to your shop. So obviously, you have big events like Comic Con, you have Free Comic Book Day, probably two of the more well-known things. But then you have little, like one-offs where you have people that come in and visit. And so you had uh, Warrington Gillette, who was Jason Voorhees. And so when you're trying to schedule these type of things, what's that process like? Are you nervous about reaching out? Do you know these people before you reach out? How does that work?
So, years ago, we worked a convention, and there was a group there that they basically do agent work for some of these guys. And I mean, we just kind of struck up a conversation with the agent, and they really thought that our shop idea and things were cool. They're located here in North Carolina. So we we just started talking to him about, hey, what would it take to get guests out? And it just kind of snowballed from there. And I mean, I have one person that I work with, Warrington, he's been to the shop several times at this point. We consider him a friend, but you know, um, we kind of talk about, um, okay, who would we want to get out to the shop that would be really cool? And my thing is, I'm a big horror movie fan, and I can't hide that at all, just by some of the things we carry in the shop. And I do my 30 days of horror at Halloween time and watch horror movies. And so a lot of the guests we get are horror movies, and you wouldn't believe like how much horror movies and comics kind of coincide a little bit, and how much each person, like the people, like both. So um they have guarantees that they have to make, or I have to pay the difference. So we kind of tested the waters a little bit with a few people, and I mean it's been going great. Our next guest is going to be Kane Hodder, who played Jason in Friday 13th Part 7, 8, 9, and 10. He's probably the most well-known Jason, one of the bigger horror movie people. And we're having him out May 21st and 22nd. We've been talking about some comic book creators and stuff coming out. A couple names thrown around, and hush hush, don't spread the word, but James O'Barr, maybe Kevin Eastman was a name that was kind of thrown up. So it really just right now it just depends on COVID too. So
Yeah.
and how comfortable a guest is, coming out. Warrington, he lives in Florida, so it's no big deal for him to drive up for the weekend and just hang out with us and have a good time. But some of the other guests, they're kind of staying inside. Some of the guests of comics and movies and things that we really loved, from the 80s and 90s. They're getting a little bit older. They're at that at risk age. So it's basically, I get with the agent and I say, okay, who do we have, that will come out, or somebody that we can reasonably have out that isn't going to charge, $20,000 or something like that. It, wa- and that's not to say that if these things continue to go really, really well, that we couldn't have somebody out like a Robert England or somebody like that. But we have to be at 100% capacity, and everybody needs to be safe and stuff like that. And I want the guests to feel comfortable as well as the customers that come see the guests too. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of dipping the toe in the water right now, and doing what we can, and having people out who feel comfortable coming out. So.
Yeah, man, that's important. You got to have the people that you're bringing in that they need to be comfortable, and you got to be able to respect their wishes and desires. So one guest that you had not too terribly long ago, Michael Bain. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I knew him more so from the Terminator, and he
Yep.
was also in Mandalorian, Aliens, Tombstone. You see the kind of images there. So how exciting was this for you? Because I know when you first talked about it, you were telling us about it. You seemed like you were kind of hyped about it.
I mean, any '80s kid knows Michael Bain. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's I mean, just from Aliens and Terminator alone, that's what I grew up with. Were Aliens, Terminator, RoboCop, Predator. All the great '80s movie franchises. And Michael Biehn, I grew up in a small town in Mississippi. We played out in the woods. We played Aliens and Terminator, and I was always Kyle Reese and Corporal Hicks. That was my guy. And he came out. We had a great time. He said he wanted to come back. I mean, it was low key. He was super chill and super nice to everybody, and I think everybody else had a great time too that came out. So he's one of my heroes, for sure. So that was a big deal for me. And it's funny because I recognize him from Terminator and Aliens the most. But you wouldn't believe the amount of people that are like, "Oh my God, Johnny Ringo, Tombstone!" That's what people came for the most. And I had so many people, and I don't know if you've seen Tombstone or not, but the Val Kilmer line, I'll be your Huckleberry. And I was like, yeah, no, don't say that to him. I'm sure he's heard that many times. So, but luckily we only got that maybe once or twice, and he was cool about it. So,
Yeah,
and he
I'm
still remembers fling the gun around too. He did do that. I wish I had a video of it. Somebody asked him, "Hey, do you remember how to do the gun tricks?" And he picked a gun up off the table. It was a prop replica that he was selling, and he twirled it and everything else, and everybody was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And I think that's a good thing about our guests here is you get more of a one-on-one, with them, as opposed to, hey, you're at a convention and there's a line out the door, and you can't talk to them really. And here you can, I mean, most of the guests want to talk to everybody. They're here for 4 or 5 hours or until the line dies down, and they're cool with it. So
Yeah, I know. I've seen a couple of times where you have those really 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 long lines, and I'm thinking, and I've been in long lines before, and it's just not the same. And so being able to go to these type of events, if you're a fan of these, actors, actresses, or whatever they're known for, this is the opportunity to go to. And so now, one of the things I grabbed a picture from your Facebook page that I wanted to talk about is you have a lot of things in your shop that are just kind of one of a kinds or just really special, and you have a Freddy glove, which I thought was incredible. Could you talk about this Freddy glove and if you would ever part ways with it?
actually, we did sell that.
Oh, you did sell it.
Yeah, we did
Nice.
sell it. It was a while ago. That's actually a piece. Um, I ended up getting in as a trade-in from my friend that's an agent for these guys. He also deals in autographs and memorabilia and things like that. So occasionally I'll buy stuff from him, and that one I got from him. And we made a shadow box out of it, made it look all cool and whatnot. And we did end up selling that. The Robert Englund stuff doesn't stick around very long, because he's huge in the horror community. But we try to make you know the autograph 8x10s and posters and things like that. A lot of the autographs that we get from them, you can't get anywhere else because they're specifically made for these events and for these people to take to shows and things like that by the agent. So he'll get his you know your digital person with Photoshop to make these exclusive pictures that only come from them. So uh, that's what I think is really cool, because when you come to one of our shows, here at the store or at the movie theater, you're getting something that you're not going to find a whole lot of out there, unless somebody comes and buys some and resells them on eBay or whatever. But once you buy it, you can do whatever you want to do with it. But
Right.
it is original pieces a lot of times. So, and a lot of people don't realize that. So I'm kind of glad that you asked about that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I'm curious to know. We briefly discussed it before we actually started the interview, and so last year, obviously, we've kind of talked about COVID a tiny bit here. What was COVID like for yourself or any other shop owners that you know? Because I know most small businesses got hit really hard, and so what was it like for Arkham in that that period?
Um, so I'm gonna try to say this being as legal as possible, I guess. But we so you had the mandatory shutdown of non-essential business. We offered curbside, we offered mailing services. It's adapt and overcome, as a business. Now, whether you shut down completely or you found different ways to do things, that was on each business owner. And I feel like, honestly, um, other than businesses that had licenses that could be taken away by the state or whatnot, we didn't really have anything to lose, so we offered curbside and delivery. And things like that. And we were technically open when we weren't supposed to, but it was one of those things that our customers wanted that, and they didn't want to do curbside. They didn't want to do, delivery. And the people that did want to do that, we were more than happy to take care of. And, we were like, okay, well, sanitize your hands, wear your face masks. I mean, typically in our store, there's no more than about 4 or 5 people at a time tops, and that's, you know, it ebbs and flows. So I think you'll see a lot of, comic book shop owners or the niche stores, like video game stores or things like that, that it all depends on how the owner reacted to the situation as to what the final outcome was. And, I'm kind of here to serve my customers, and if they want something, then I'll make it happen. So, so we we had a bad month. April, of course, that was the worst. And technically, since July, everything has pretty much been back on track. I mean, this year, you know, has been phenomenal, and I'm really glad to see, you know, the I'm trying to think of how to put it. Maybe the irrational fear of not knowing about COVID. You know, not understanding or not having enough knowledge of, the actual disease itself has kind of slowed down a little bit, and people are kind of understanding, like, okay, hey, we need to wear masks, when we go out and about. And you know everybody's gotten really kind of chill and a lot more accepting of the masks. I mean, you have your occasional moments here and there, but we tell people, hey, please wear the mask, sanitize your hands. We have hand sanitizer everywhere in the store. So even if you don't want to wear a mask, everyone around you does, and it would probably be a good idea to wear your mask. Yeah. So
Right, right.
it's just kind of it's just kind of an experiment, honestly, on in business. And I hate to put it that way, but we applied for the PPP loans, we applied for the SBA loans, and we were fortunate enough to get those. And it helped us through the tough times, and we're back running well. Everybody's starting to get the vaccine, and like I said, it's kind of easing people's fear. The biggest thing is, I think we talked about it, and I'm in that age range where I would get sick probably, but I don't give it to anybody that is at risk or in that age range where they're at risk, because that would weigh heavy on my conscience. I'll put it that way. So
Yeah.
I want everybody. It goes back to the whole thing with the um the stars coming out, the Michael Bain and all them, and how comfortable everybody really is, and that's what we want here. So
Yeah. We got to find some sense of normalcy in a way. Even if it's slowly going back to the way things were, we still want, and I think, that's one thing I was concerned about, especially with a lot of the small business owners I used to interview on the Business with Bordeaux show or podcast is, Amazon's doing great. Walmart's doing great. All the big places are doing fine, but then you got the smaller shops that are not
hmm
really able to survive and make it. And then you lose that personal touch, that connection point with other people that you have there. Like you said, Arkham is a place where you can meet all sorts of people you would have never met anywhere else. And
exactly.
you don't want to necessarily take that away. And you have Facebook groups and stuff, but it's not quite the same. There's some things you can do, but it ain't quite the same. And so,
Well, I'll definitely say we, in 2020 we had big plans for events and guests, and every we started planning for the rest of the year in January of 2020. Not knowing that COVID was going to continue to grow and grow and grow into this thing that, you know, crippled most of the nation. So everything that we had planned just kind of got moved, and like I said, we just had to adapt and overcome and figure out new ways to, bring money in and things like that. So we turned to a lot of online sales, and our we've had an eBay store since we've been open, and online sales shot way up. So where we were kind of losing in shop, we kind of made up online, which okay, it's eBay. I hate eBay. I'd much rather have customers in my store that I can talk to directly, and they can hold the books and see what they want. But I
Yeah.
think we're kind of starting to get back to people feeling comfortable being out and about. So I think you're going to see 2021 as a turnaround. I hope anyway. I'll put it that way. So
Gotcha.
you
So one thing I do want to talk about is I've heard y'all briefly mention it before in store. Is one thing that I thought was interesting is where comic book shops actually get their comics from. If I'm not mistaken, there's what, one or two
know,
distributors of comics, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
it's funny that you asked that question. So without going into a long, detailed explanation, you have one. You had one distributor of comics, which was Diamond Comics. Um, you know, any shop owner is going to tell you that they were just the bane of their existence because their customer service was just awful. They're the only ones sending out comics, so if they messed something up, they didn't really care. Uh, there was no sense of urgency. There was no, it could make or break my sales week, because if I get something in it's damaged or I don't get it at all, there's several other shops that people can go to and buy it. um, so Diamond, I think 40 years has had a monopoly on the comic distribution, and in 2020, DC severed ties with Diamond and started distributing their own stuff through I think it was UCS and Lunar, which was a West Coast and an East Coast distributor, and which has now swapped over just to Lunar. And in 2021, Marvel is going to part ways with Diamond too, and this is huge
Wow.
for the industry. I mean, this is I hate it for Diamond, and like I said, people will have mixed emotions about Diamond Comics or whatnot, but for the most part, I think it's a game changer, and I think you're going to see the comic industry and comic shops get paid more attention to and have a more personal, one-on-one rapport with the distributor, and being able to, get product quickly, efficiently, undamaged, hopefully, because that's the number one complaint with Diamond. But
Mm.
it's a lot of things are changing right now with the way that comics are sent out and distributed, and I think it's a positive change, personally. So.
Now, I don't know what kind of experience you've had, but just a couple of funny things I've heard that have been found in comic book distribution boxes is I've heard there's been like McDonald's wrappers or French fries, cigarette butts. I heard someone say they saw like half of a joint in a box one time.
Um, so we have found highlighters, razor blades. We had a sports bra one time. It was not in the package, so that means that someone had to have taken it off or had it in their pocket and put it in a box. But we've had, yeah, just a number of things, mostly bugs. You'll get some bugs in there, but I mean, I guess that's understandable. But nothing alive and breathing that's of any consequence. I'll put it that way.
So those are the
But
ones
yeah,
you Lysol down real good.
right, right, right. I think we posted it one time on Facebook too, that we pulled that sports bra out of a diamond box, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, that's got to be an interesting story somewhere someone's telling right now. I don't know where the
Right,
sports bra went. I can't find it anywhere. And
right. I, I always joke about Diamond too because one of their distribution centers is actually in the town that I grew up in when I was a kid, and I kind of joke about it. I'm like, well, if any of the people that I went to school with work there, I know why they're kind of suck right now. So yeah.
oh man. So before we end this up, man, I want you to give. I'm just going to call out some categories or whatever, and you just kind of give your favorite from that category. Um, so it's kind of a lightning round. So favorite DC film.
Favorite DC film? Keaton Batman.
Okay, awesome. Favorite Marvel villain.
Ooh. Um, I kind of like Ultron. If you're looking at the MCU, I like Doctor Doom as far as comics go.
Okay, okay. Favorite Star Wars Jedi.
Oh, um, I'm kind of thinking Mace Windu on that because I mean it's Samuel Jackson, so
How about favorite current comic book? If you're reading any comic books.
current comic. You know what? I'm reading a lot of indie titles, mostly horror, sci-fi. Sea of Sorrows. I'm really digging right now. That's an indie. I think indie is honestly where it's at right now. I'm reading a few. Walking Dead actually is what got me back into reading current comics because for a while I was just collecting key issues and things like that. But yeah, I would probably have to say indie comics. Period. I'll try anything. So.
Who was a coveted guest you'd love to have come and be in your store?
Hmm. I mean, I would probably have to say Stanley. I know, he's passed away, but I always I met him once and it was very, impersonal because there were so many people in line to meet him, and I think that had he have been in a place like Arkham, he could have let loose and chilled and talked to everybody. So I honestly would love to have had Stanley here. That would be my number one guess. But I mean, I had Michael Bean, so that was that was
Yeah.
probably a good one for me. So
So, what's one thing that you sold in the store that you didn't want to sell?
everything. I mean, when I first opened the store, it was one of those things I had to decide, I can't be a collector. The one thing, honestly, that I do regret selling is I had a reprinting of X-Men that was signed by Jack Kirby. And for whatever reason, I got a wild hair up my butt one day and was like, I'm going to sell this, and sold it and then immediately regretted it. But the good thing being it went to somebody that I know personally and they put it in their personal collection. It's never going anywhere. And, it was under the guise of, okay, well, if you sell this, you come to me first. So that was the one thing I think I do kind of regret. But hey, it made somebody else happy. So not too bad.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, one last question: if you didn't have a comic book store, you weren't a comic book store owner, what would you do for a living? Like, what would your other job be?
Oh, Jesus.
That's a tough
I,
job. I don't know if anybody else could really do that.
right. No, 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 no. I wouldn't want that job, most definitely. Well, I mean, prior to this, I'd worked in the retail industry for years and years and years. I mean, before I opened up Arkham Comics, I mean, you see me right now, I'm unshaved and, wearing a zombie t-shirt. And prior to Arkham, I was clean shaven, button up shirt, slacks, shiny shoes,
Okay.
doing the retail management things. That's probably what I would be doing, honestly. I wouldn't be having any fun whatsoever,
Mm,
but that's probably what I would fall back on. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're able to live out this fun and exciting journey of owning a comic book shop. And I appreciate you sharing with people what that experience is like and telling us about the diamond finds. And I don't mean the diamonds in the rough. I mean the things that you've.
Right. Well, I have a whole bunch of highlighters now, so
There
we're
you go.
good.
Make sure they're sanitized because they probably came around the same box as the sports bra. So anyway, man,
Right.
Bill, again, I appreciate your time and taking this journey with us, and hopefully this will give some people some insight into the comic book shop. And look, seek out your local comic book shop. Go and pick something out. If you had to tell somebody just one thing, what they should maybe start with, if they went to a comic book shop, if they just wanted to start with anything, what would be some recommendations, kind of a varying uh, genres, if you will?
Decide which character you think is the coolest, and ask your comic book shop owner or employee, where can I start with this character? Because if you try to jump into Avengers, you've got 300 different Avengers, over the years or whatnot. So pick a character that you think is the coolest. Start reading into their background, their story, and you'll see other characters kind of come and flow through the years. And if you decide, hey, I like this other character better, there's tons of things out there that any responsible comic book store owner would be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So, but
Awesome, man.
definitely support comics and comic book stores. It's really important. Uh, I have no ill will towards any of my competitors or anything because every comic book store is different. I'll be more than happy to tell people, hey, look, I don't have this, but maybe somebody else does, and it's a community at the end of the day. So, um, you know, start with what you think looks cool. Just like I started with the artwork cover on Spider-Man and just went from there. Just jump right in.
Yeah, and I want to say I'll verify shots are totally different from each other. There was a shop I went to. I can't even remember where it was, but it was essentially a Magic the Gathering card tournament shop that sold comic books.
Hmm.
And then so things like that were, it was just different. It was different from Arkham. I can't remember. I think I was looking for something specific that I wanted to read that day, and I didn't think Arkham was closed or something. But they're all different. So even it's like, I don't know, it's like music or whatever. They might not all be your flavor, but check out a couple different ones. And unfortunately, there's not really, at least there's not a whole lot close to me necessarily. So we do trek out to Arkham and Rocky Mount from where I live at to get hours. And just sometimes I just like to go look around sometimes. um, I know it's not necessarily the best for business, but sometimes it's just a place to go and see what's out there, see what's new, what type of different characters, who has new titles. And it's interesting to see, especially when the movies are coming out, and then all of a sudden all these characters have their own titles, like Taskmaster. When Black Widow was supposed to come out a year ago,
Right.
they decided to drop a his own title, and so it's interesting to see all that stuff. And
I have a motto for the store. You'll never come in my store and never get spoken to because I think that's kind of rude in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I don't want to pester people either. So I'll have people come in and my motto is, hey, what you looking for today? Oh, I'm just looking. Okay, well that's how you find the good stuff. So keep on looking. Let me know if you have questions. So,
awesome, man, awesome. Well, we'll end it on that. Bill, thank you again, sir. I hope your business flourishes in 2021 and that nothing but great things happen to your shop, sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on. It was a great.
Alrighty.